Okay, welcome to the Awaken Man podcast. Today we are talking about, Pete,
how to be a high value man.
High value man. And guys, how to be a high value man is going to come in, well, I think it's about 5 or 6 different pointers today we're going to walk through. And Pete suggested this topic. And I was on the train down here. We just come down to London today to record the podcast. And I was thinking about this. And as soon as you mentioned it, it reminded me of something Jordan Peterson said. He said, your job as a parent is to make your child attractive, as in not attractive as in like sexually attractive, like, welcomed into social circles by the age of 7. And I remember listening to that, I was like, hang on a second. And he goes on to explain it about why it's so important to be socially acceptable for a child. And he talks about how it then moves into adolescence, into early 20s, because when you are well accepted, high value, welcome into a social circle, your life is just way, way easier and more successful. And I think the same shade applies to men. I think sometimes we do things as men which actually diminishes our value and we're not conscious of it. And actually, even again, the same trail of thought as I was coming down here, I looked back on some of the episodes of the podcast over the last 2 years now. We've nearly been doing it. And I look where I haven't done my hair. I've not been wearing clothes that really fit me as well as I probably wanted to. And I look back and I was like, I don't look great there. And I was like, that's something I made a decision on about 2 months ago. I'm like, I'm going to really invest more in a wardrobe like I used to. And as I started to delve into this high value, these pointers we're going to share on today's podcast, this was a major part of it, So yeah, I'm really looking forward to sharing on this topic.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were going to say something about Jordan Peterson, but that's a really fucking good point, like about raising good children and then bringing them into society. Because if you, as the father, right, ultimately the role model for your boy or your girl, isn't leading high value or doesn't have high values, or falls into something like nice guy tendencies, isn't assertive, doesn't like have strong boundaries, doesn't hold his ground, isn't confident, isn't courageous, then that's where your boy or your girl is gonna learn those not necessarily great traits if you're doing the opposite.
Yeah, I just had that the thought over it, like, Poppy, do you can we have Pete over and Leo? And she's like, oh, Leo, he's a brat, he's horrible. He's like, she doesn't say that because he's really well behaved. But it's like, if you are a man who's got these good traits, you've disciplined your children, you've got high value traits in terms of your own discipline and the way you show up as a leader, your kid's going to be well behaved. And then you're, as a prospect, like I talked about going to Dubai, as a prospect of meeting other people, you're more welcomed into social circles and it makes it way easier for you. So there's so many shades of how this actually might manifest for you in your life. It could be becoming a high value man will make it easier to get employment. It might make it easier to get deals if you're a salesperson. Equally, it will make you more attractive in the dating game as well. So there's going to be different flavors for different guys listening to this podcast, and you ladies as well, is that when you're looking for high value men, these might be some of the traits that you want to look out for, because guys, sometimes it can be done unconsciously because it's been demonstrated through fathers, social circles, or a guy can go and work on this. And I've seen this happen. I've seen it in my friendship circles. I've seen it in the guys that we work with, is that they've gone and actually nurtured these things and their life is changing as well.
Yeah, and it's important to note this, right? We're going to talk through 6 or 7 traits. Doesn't just happen overnight. Like, this is like, you are building the man, you are creating the man. This isn't great, I'm just going to follow those 7 steps now and tomorrow I'm going to be that man. No, this takes fucking years. This takes a lot. It takes a long time to be able to create that man. And also, if you've got pre-existing traits that aren't necessarily good, you've got to be able to reduce them and then eliminate them.
Yeah,
it takes time.
Let's dive in. The first one is develop something called a balanced self-esteem. Now, when I started looking down the route of self-esteem, because I read Nathaniel Branden's 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. Great book. And it's quite a hard read. You know, if you're new to self-development, if you read that book, it's quite deep, and it's really goes into the 6 pillars. We're not going to go into them today, but I think we should do a podcast on that. Is self-esteem is how we perceive ourselves in the world, like what we believe we're worthy of, what we believe we're capable of, how we trust our promises. There's so much depth to self-esteem as a whole topic. But what I think is really important for a high value man is a balanced self-esteem. Now, what I mean by this is you're not overly confident, you're not low self-esteem, but you've got healthy self-esteem. So overly high self-esteem might look like cocky, it might look like self-indulgent, entitlement. And you might have come across guys like that before, Pete. I don't know, in your work, you've got guys that they've almost inflated their self-esteem to mask something.
Mm-hmm.
So when they show up in the world, they're quite abrasive, or they rub people up the wrong way. And that's, to them, they seem self-important, they seem, super, super confident, but actually in an organization, they can actually be quite detrimental. It can diminish their value. So that's why I think it's really important to have a balanced self-esteem where you can just temper that. You can really, really fit into social situations. You can be super confident, but equally you're humble and you've got that real nice balance. So that's the first one. And have you noticed that in guys before?
Yeah, I think I like to use the word self-respect, which fits into this. Like having strong self-respect is you having a good level of self-esteem, right? So, and you can tell that when a man, like the other day, I think I triggered a number of people when I said that women respond well to status, right? But part of like a man having status is him having like self-esteem and self-respect. You can tell that when the man walks into a room and he respects himself.
I wonder why guys got triggered by that.
It wasn't guys, it was women.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the feedback?
No, we want a big heart. We don't care about status. We just want men with big hearts.
Yeah, that's actually that's interesting.
Real interesting.
Yeah, but I think that there's an assumption there that they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Like, if a guy who's got status won't have a big heart, well, why wouldn't you want both?
Yeah, but for me, and this is where like I think the point was missed, is to acquire status, you've got to go through personal development. You've got to improve, self-improvement. You've got to have a lot of self-respect, but you have to, like, every facet of your life improve. So I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to get a better body, and I'm going to look good. My status increases.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to go, I'm going to work on my professional skills, right? My leadership skills, my selling skills, my marketing skills. Guess what? I rise up in my career, or my business will rise up. I earn more money. I earn more status. I've got teams underneath me. I've got more status, right? Again, it's an attractive thing. And it's the same with like social circles. The guys that are like, they're the ones that dishing out all the barbecue. The guys are all around them while they're telling a story.
Yeah.
The guy who's got like higher emotional intelligence, who's able to hold a story, pause when he needs to pause, and then continue, and then read the room. Status.
Yeah.
It's all very, very attractive. But for a man to be able to get to that position, he's not born with it. He builds that.
I think that's like really what Pete's done there, is just like hammer home the point of self-esteem. And I think you could probably relate to this, guys, as well. You've been at a barbecue, you've been at an event, and then you've wanted to talk, but then all of a sudden, everyone's looking at you. And because you've got low self-esteem, you don't perceive yourself as somebody who's worthy of everyone's attention. You shrink. As you're talking, you feel yourself getting less and less confident. And I can guarantee that as I'm sharing this, you've had that situation. And I've had it, but in the wrong room. Like when I go and hang around with footballers or with people that I don't share many values with, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, it's not my crowd. I've had that feeling. So I think what the point here is that when you've got high self-esteem, you believe that you're worthy of people's
It's
attention.
self-belief.
Yeah, you can, like, what I'm sharing in this conversation is worthwhile, and you believe in what you're saying, so you can hold that space really powerfully. And you can see this in stage speakers as well, something that when you're on a stage, there's the person that goes on and they're really quick, they speak really quickly, they mince their words, they're very nervous. And like when we had the speakers at men's business, like Robert Glover came to men's business, the way that he held that room, like it was phenomenal. You know, he was a masterclass in holding the room. And I think that going back to high value, when you want to be a high value man, put yourself on a stage, and all of a sudden your perceived value goes through the roof.
Yeah, and just like going back to my status thing, back to his prime example, Robert Glover. Right. So he was talking in front of our guys. There was like 60, 70 guys there. Everyone is just focused on what he's saying. And it's like hanging off every word that is coming out of his mouth. So was the receptionist.
Yeah.
It was a lady. Right. She'd never met Robert. Robert's, how old is Robert? Is he in his 70s?
Maybe 60s, 70s, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's early 70s. And she said afterwards, wow, she was like, that is so attractive. Like what he was talking about, how he's holding the room. Like there's a man with like, he's got status and he's got self-belief.
Yeah. I think this, like what was coming up for me as well is like for guys who are able to schmooze men and women. And like, you know, I was joking with a couple of guys on the group the other day, is that in my 20s, I used to like direct message women. So I don't really message women anymore. I just direct message men. So I'm having like, you know, I'm schmoozing guys. I'm actually talking to them. There's a bit of like what I would, and I don't know what the actual is. It's schmoozing, isn't it? Like really just getting to know someone, opening them up, having a good conversation. That is a very, very high value skill.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, in today's world,
Yeah.
in the 2023, DMing women or sliding into a woman's DMs is, I wouldn't say it's high value anymore. Because what's high value is being able to see a woman that you find attractive in the supermarket or in the gym and to have a conversation face to face. Because DMing is so easy. It's like anyone can do it. You can just hide behind your keyboard and it's just like, well, I could send that same message to 20 women and it's just so easy.
That's a really good point.
Right. But actually but it's in today's world. And I'll be interested for the lady listeners on how they feel about this as well.
Yeah.
Are their inboxes filled with DMs from random guys or requests to be their friend from random guys? How often do they now get approached in public? And if they do get approached in public, how attractive is that? Because I bet it's attractive.
Yeah.
Because it shows a level of confidence.
I think that's a massive point, because I think that's what's made the internet has made it so much easier for guys to hide behind the easy methods of and actually we know we've got coming on the podcast a guy that's talking about dating in a couple of weeks as well. So, but I think this is a really good point, man.
Do you know what and this portrays laziness. It's guys being fucking lazy. Which isn't attractive, which is not high value. I would like that. If we're talking about the values of a high value man, laziness does not come into that equation.
Well, I guess the assumption is, oh, he's actually gone out of his way to make an effort here. You know, I think that's something that even with my partner, with Poppy, is that when I've gone out my way to do something special or to do something that's above an easy, like, you know, act of service or, you know, words of affirmation, when I've done something that's hard, she really appreciates that. She's like, oh my God, thank you so much. That really, you know, that's a high value bid, if you wish.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I think we could literally do a whole podcast on that.
But also, like, just with you and Poppy, for you as a partner to be able to confidently compliment her. Right. And not like and truly mean that, because like a lot and listen, I fell into this trap that me complimenting Denise like we wouldn't do it that often. But it's because we just had this like, well, of course she's beautiful. The woman's stunning, right? But I wouldn't say that. I would just, I would just assume that she knows that, right? So again, like a high value man appreciates his woman and frequently tells her.
Yeah.
Like, because you don't have that assumption and go, well, she knows she's beautiful, right? She knows I think she's beautiful. That's no. That's an assumption.
Complacency.
It is complacency. Again, it's laziness.
Yeah. I think even more recently, Poppy did a body transformation, and I've just slowed down, and I've just looked her in the eye and said, listen, you look amazing. I'm really, really proud of you. And it always hits. It's like taking that time. And I talked about it as telling Pete in the coffee shop before. We went to Ibiza on a couple of weeks ago, a week ago. And I got to Ibiza. She looked amazing. And we got to 2 minutes within her friends leaving and we were having sex. And it was like the tension that was the distance. I think we should actually talk more about this, is that we had a couple of days away from each other. I looked after the kids, did a great job of that. She was excited to see me. I looked good. She looked good. And when we met each other, there was this tension. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But I did a cardinal sin, is I didn't hold that tension.
Self-restraint.
Self-restraint. Yeah, this could be it literally could go in the list that we've got for here today. Didn't restrain myself enough. And it was an impulsive, it was great. But then both of us afterwards, because we've both been learning about dynamic tension, we both said, oh, we should have held that feeling for a little bit longer. And I was like, yeah, damn. But what is good is that we both recognize that feeling now. Anyway, but that what Pete mentioned there, self-restraint, we were talking about this because you've been reading Napoleon Hill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about that.
But I talked about sexual transmutation, right? Which is it's self-restraint, right? Because it's not releasing the sexual energy into having a wank or having sex. It's using that sexual energy in another endeavor, right? And like what Napoleon Hill was talking about is that there's a commonality between super successful guys and their sex drive's been really, really high. And it's not to say they're not out having sex, because they are, but they also use that energy in different ways.
Yeah, and like looking at, just I know we haven't even got it down here, but self-restraint is that I think when most women get most disappointed in men is when they've demonstrated low levels of self-restraint. Like, you normally hear about when someone's cheated on someone or
it's a poor level of self-restraint.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh, I can't believe he's done that. I can't believe he's lowered himself to that level. And it's like, it's a very disgusting, like the disgust emotion comes up for people. Like, I can't believe you lowered yourself to that.
Well, I think this is probably this is on the list. Self-restraint needs to be on the list as a very high value trait in a man. Like high value men, ultimately it's a form of discipline. It is do you know what? Like having a shitty time in a relationship, and I didn't go looking at other women on Instagram. I didn't start following other women on Instagram. I didn't like their photos because it's fucking disrespectful to my woman that's at home. Right? There's a form of self-restraint there. Yeah. Right? I didn't go and masturbate to porn. Self-restraint. I didn't go and spend 3 hours watching Netflix when I could have done something on the business or could have gone out and worked on my health. It's a form of self-restraint. Yeah. It's a very, very high value trait.
There's actually when I started learning from Barry and Phil, like Barry Michaels has a talk at Google, and what a lot of people believe is that self-restraint is the path to death. That's what they equate in their head, is like, if I restrain myself, if I go without this thing, I'm going to somehow lead me to death. Like if I don't go and eat the cookie, if I don't go and have that cigarette, I'm like that deprivation is literally going to kill me. That's the kind of the thought we have in the moment. Whereas what they say is deprivation, self-restraint is actually the path back to life. And that is like when they framed confidence, and we're going off a little bit of a tangent, but it's really important, is that confidence is really self-restraint. It's the ability to say, I'm not going to do that. I follow through on not doing that, and I believe myself more, so I can put myself in any situation where I'm tempted away from my mission, my vision, and I'm good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a
I think it's like even today's podcast. Ben said to me, "Do you want to meet me and Gail's and we'll have breakfast?" And I was like, "No, I'm not going to eat. Right, I'm actually going to restrain from eating until after we've done the podcasts because we're going to do 3 hours worth of them." And I like the feeling of me not having eaten because I know that it gives me a bit of an edge. I know it does, and I can just have a bit of caffeine, and it will really, really give me an edge. And it is I'm hungry. Like I've trained this morning.
He has got 2 dry chicken breasts in a box in his bag, and I was like, he's really on the deprivation.
But it's a form of self-restraint because, like, listen, like I'm not gonna eat. I'm gonna restrain so I can be on edge because I know I feel good, and I'll eat afterwards.
Yeah. Next one, a high value man. How to create yourself as a high value man. You see personal development as a non-negotiable, and this is something that I didn't really see it in myself until I actually wrote it down. I was like, holy shit, man, you've always done this. And I was like, giving myself some credit because I have done personal development every freaking day since I was like 16, 17 years old. And Pete has reflected this back to me a few times. He's done the same. And I didn't realize that I've consumed and produced, I've taught a lot of self-development in this arena for such a long time. And I've done it every single morning. I've always had a book. I've been, sometimes I go through intense periods where I'll do 2-3 hours a day. Other times I'll just be a page a day. I'll just read a page and take what I need from that one page. But I think the difference between a man who really struggles emotionally, physically, psychologically in his relationships and his business, he hasn't got the reference points that self-development can give you, whether it's reading a book, consuming a decent podcast, whether it's having a mentor, being part of a group, whatever your self-development looks like, doing a course, doing a university course. Self-development has to be a non-negotiable for you. It's as important in your day as training your body, is training your mind. And that was a really big, I think it was when I wrote the notes for this podcast, I was like, holy shit, this has been a non-negotiable for me. And it's just a habit. I don't even have to motivate myself to do it. I've always got something there. And seeing guys who struggle, I said to one guy who was on the program, he's like, I really struggle with my attention. I was like, read a fucking book. And he's like, I can't read a book because of my attention span. I'm like, well, can you see the irony here? You've never sat down and read a book and, really just slowed down, read the book, and then taking your time and doing the next one. I think so many people now I've got ADHD, I've got attention deficit disorder, I've got, I can't focus. Well, go figure, you consume most of the things you learn on a attention deficit media.
Yeah.
So this is a big one for guys, I think.
Yeah. And also just on the, personal development and self-development, the spectrum is vast. But just on reading and learning, you become wiser, and you become more interesting because you can talk about vast different subjects rather than just like the surface level. Oh, what was the score on the weekend between Liverpool Man United? Like, you could talk about the hierarchy of needs from Abraham Maslow. You can talk about stimulus and response from Viktor Frankl. Right? There's interesting fucking conversations there that are a lot deeper, and that is. It's attractive to both male and female.
Yeah. I think, I don't know about you, I struggle when I get into those conversations with guys. And we talked about this with the status conversation. I'm like, if I go and speak to a guy and he's got nothing to say around other than football, weather, a
couple of weeks ago, I went to my buddy's barbecue, right, and a load of guys turned up. And one of the guys came over and started having a conversation with us, and he was telling us about him having a fight the day before in the football. So he's part of a football team, and he said he was having a fight, and there was 11 of them versus 11 of them on the football field having a big tear up. And he's like, and he was like, I was telling the missus later on about it, and like my son was in the room, and I'm like, so immediately in my head, I'm like, so this guy, he's got missus at home, he's got a son, and he's on the football pitch on a Saturday afternoon having a tear up. I walked away. I'm like, this is low valued for me. This gives me nothing. I'm gaining nothing out of this. In fact, the guy's fucking pissing me off, right? Because it's just disgusting. I walked away. The other guy who I was with, who used to be part of that world, he also walked away and came after me. So now the guy's standing on his own, right? And he was like, and I said to the guy, I was like, do you see what I mean? Because I was just talking to him about environment and how important it is and to be a high level environment. I was like, do you see what I mean? You stay in that environment, people like that, they bring you down to their level, right? You stay in an environment with other guys like myself, who has a high level of intellect, and I will talk about bigger subjects. It's interesting. You grow.
Yeah.
Right. And I got to that place through copious amounts of personal development and learning that, environment literally does dictate how we see the world and how we act and how we grow.
Yeah. I think what I've noticed about when I talk about being in the self-development world, like, I've been a coach for a long time. I was in fitness for a long time. When I'll get someone to come up to me and talk about, oh yeah, I read this one book once, and they almost completed self-development. It's like, oh yeah, I read the Chimp Paradox.
Yeah.
It's just like, and that's the attitude they've had. They've consumed the book, but nothing's changed. And I think this is a danger, and I think it's actually what gives self-development a real bad rap, is that there's so many armchair experts in the self-development world, whereas what I think self-development should be is you consume less and produce more. So you might literally listen to this podcast and you go and create something, like a shift from one of the points that you've listened to.
I've got an interesting point. And and this question's come up a number of times from men in our programs, from men outside of our programs. And the question is, what happens when we, as maybe the partner, raises our bar so much in personal development, self-growth, but our partner, our love partner, doesn't follow us?
It's problematic.
It can be problematic.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what happens when we're doing so much personal growth and then our relationship partner doesn't follow us?
I think that happened to me, yeah.
I asked this to shout out to Sadia Khan, because we did a session together, and I asked her this question. And the answer she gave me was really interesting. She said that typically, like, couples will stay together even when one person's on a path of all this growth, when they share the same values. So both of them are still very aligned with their life values, right? And the second thing is that when your partner shows a lot of interest into what you're doing. So even if she doesn't understand it to the full extent as you do, but she shows interest. So say like, you're at work, you're hosting all these high-level meetings, right? Your partner might not understand the in-depth of these high-level meetings, but she might really actually want to know how your day went. Like, how did those meetings go?
Yeah.
Did the meetings go well? Like, what happened in the meetings? Like, so she's not necessarily understanding the complexities of it, because it might be past her intellect, but because she's showing so much interest in you, that's when the couples can stay together rather than outgrow each other.
Yeah, because I was thinking when you're saying that, actually, because my first marriage, I was just constantly on this big arc of self-development. And I think that was one of the things that drove a wedge between the two of us. And I think, as you said there, the values were different. I wanted a family. She wanted houses and cars and holidays.
There you go.
And I think that's what drove us apart. And actually, a bit of an aha moment there. Whereas Poppy, she wants experiences, family, everything I want. And she's actually on her own self-development journey as well. Actually, one of the best things I did, I didn't do it at all. One of the best things that she did for our relationship and herself was get her own coach. Like she shifted enormously when she had her own coach, and it wasn't driven by me. It was totally autonomous. And that was such a refreshing shift in our relationship, because all of a sudden she was less reactive. She was more centered. She understood herself more. And that actually markedly improved our relationship. And one of my goals for the relationship as well is actually to be in a space where we can do some couples work together. So whether it's a couples mentoring program, couples therapy, because to improve our relationship. And I think that this is going back to, what the topic of the how to be a high value man. It's have a high value relationship. And a lot of people, and I've said this on previous podcasts, when we're around people, they're like, "Oh my God, your relationship's fantastic." It is. It's a great relationship. It comes with its struggles and challenges, but it's a great relationship. And I think there's something when I've been going through my 20s and 30s, when I've been around couples who have got a great relationship, I've seen that as really inspirational. Like I worked with Travis Sago. I went to stay at his house, and you watched him and his wife Jeannie, and it was like amazing to watch how he treated her, how he showed up, how they, yeah. And that was I remember like as a young man, like late 20s, early 30s, going, that's what I want my relationship to look like. That is super valuable. And when he gave you advice about anything, it all came back to, yeah, he's doing all of that and he's got a great relationship. And I would always have guys who wanted to give me advice about business, but I'd know in the background their relationship was in fucking mess. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I could work like you, but equally you've worked like that and your relationship's in tatters. So yeah, it's an interesting point. Do you want to share anything more on that, Pete,
No.
before we move on? Okay, cool. Next one we got here is how to handle high pressure situations. And I think this comes from it's more of a leadership point. Like a really great leader, a high value man in a situation, when the shit hits the fan, he doesn't go hyperactive, reactive, loses cool. He goes the opposite way. And there's something about a guy that you can come to when you've lost your head a little bit, and he's like, hang on a second, let's cool things down and give you some really good quality advice. And I actually had a really great coach just reach out to me on Messenger the other day. He goes, mate, can I just have your opinion on something? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he goes, I really value your opinion and your groundedness. And I've got a lot of people in my world. He said that they're just a bit unhinged and I don't value their opinion as much. And anyway, it turns out gave him some cracking advice. And I was like, listen, I think it's just this you should do. And he messaged me a couple of days afterwards saying, dude, thank you so much. That was so helpful. And what I think is attractive about that and it's high value about that is that it's really those people in moments where you need to be at your best or their worst or they're not trustworthy. And I think that's a really important, we've talked about this is like when you're at your worst is when you need to be at your best. And those high value men who you can point out on one hand that you'd go to in business, your relationship, in your fitness, when you've totally lost the plot, they're the people that you want to have in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just really just learning to deal with like what you like dealing with stress, Pete. Like, well, you're very good actually. You're very
I'm very good.
Very pragmatic.
I think a big part of this and what you were just saying there on being able to be cool and collected is having a deep inner confidence in your ability. It's also is being able to be aware of your emotions and having an understanding of your emotions and being conscious of them. So heated situation, rather than anger raising through the roof and turning into aggression, you know when the anger comes up and it's like, sweet, the anger's coming up now. I could keep this going and it could go into aggression and this could go the wrong way. Or I could stay simmering at that top level anger where I'm holding this firm and I'm setting clear boundaries or whatever that looks like. And because you're able to control the emotions because you are aware of them.
Yeah.
So there's a high level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I went, Pete's done this as well. We went with one of our clients through the bushes of Ibiza. And he said, I said to him, let's go for a run. And one of our clients, he said, I'll take you on one of my runs. And it wasn't a run. It was walking through the beaten track in Ibiza, no path. And like you're getting spiked, you're stepping on logs that are breaking. It's frustrating. And I said to him afterwards, like, dude, that's like really good training to be able to deal with constant annoying little things. And he's like, absolutely. He said, I take guys up here and they lose their shit. It's just, I remember going with a business owner. I went up one of the mountains in South Wales and he got his feet wet he lost his shit. And I was like, dude, you just got wet socks. It's fine. But he lost his shit. He didn't know how to deal with it. He's like, oh my God, my feet are wet. My feet are wet. And I'm like, it's just your feet are wet. Deal with it. And so it's interesting how people respond. And I was like, and it was an automatic assumption from on my behalf, like, well, if you can't deal with his feet getting wet, how do we deal with this happening in business? Or, so it's kind of an interesting point. The next one we've got is learn how to coach. And this is something that I can vouch for, is that a high value skill, even in like from a monetary perspective, a coach will get paid a lot of money, especially a good coach. The coaching market is getting super loads of people coming into coaching now from left, right, and center. Everyone's becoming a coach online. You can see this all the time. But a really, really good coach who can teach you high value conversational skills as a leader, as a man, as a husband, as a father, being able to coach is such a high value skill. It's like you do not overlook this because of what you may think about coaching as an industry. Learning that the skill of coaching is super high value, isn't it? Like well, you're practically, you were coaching before you even knew you were a coach.
Yeah. I was using it in leadership, right, with my teams. And it's just the best form of leadership, being able to, rather than like micromanaging. It's like if you're able to coach someone out of a situation, then you can help them coach themselves into changing their own mindset for positive. It's it's transformational for people. So and that's like when you're able to coach someone at a high level, you will evoke their emotions, and evoking emotions is long lasting.
Yeah. I think this is like, if you look at it from this perspective, is that, like Pete mentioned there, a manager will just manage someone. They'll just allow them to perpetuate a certain skill set. Whereas a coach will bring the best out of them. They'll challenge them. They'll show them a mirror. They'll do all these things that will help them grow as a person. And that, say you're in a company now and you've got coaching skills and you can grow the people around you. You grow your team. You don't just perpetuate the skill set that you've got going on. And that's valuable. Growth in a company is valuable. So this is something that if you don't know how to coach, go and learn. We actually, we've got a certification on the Way Command. We've noticed, and this is something we're reevaluating at the moment, the Way Command certification. We've noticed the people who are learning how to be a certified coach, their lives are changing. They're having better conversations. And all we're doing is we're teaching them the underpinning understanding about male psychology. And because they understand it on such a deep level, as it comes up in their life, they're like, right, okay, I need to do this now. So it's really, really powerful.
Well, you learn to coach yourself.
Yeah.
You learn to coach, like when you understand coaching, you learn to be able to coach yourself at a high level. And so when you're personally going through some shit, I know some tools that I can get through this via coaching myself.
Yeah. And it's a good point actually, Pete. Most people think that you have to actually go and get a coach. You don't. You just need to learn to self-coach. And actually the first part of coaching is learning to self-coach. Next one is dress really fucking well. We were talking about it just before we started the podcast. And I think probably like I said 2 months ago, said, do you know what? I really want to invest in my image, because not for anyone else other than how I feel when I've got nice clothes on. And when I moved to Dubai, because I was not going out of the house that much, because I was at home loads, because I was being a dad, I let that drop a little bit. And I look back, and as soon as I realized it, I bought into this narrative. I don't need any clothes, don't need to get new stuff. The Dubai desert sun had faded a lot of my clothes as well. It sounds really first world problems, but I went out and just spent, 250, 300 quid on some nice clothes, and I felt really, really good. And going back to the self-worth thing we talked about first, the self-esteem, and there's a judgment we make, and we inherently make it because when we see someone, they're dressed well, the hair's good, the beard's on point, you're like, oh, that guy looks after himself. And there's a load of other assumptions that then follow suit. And so this really does, like we talked about last week about how to get over divorce. I don't know if we talked about it in the podcast, but go and get yourself like a load of new clothes, go and get a shave, go and get a great barber. You feel better. And actually, when you go back out into the dating game, you're like, oh, I feel, I've really worked on my self-worth. And I think paying attention to this stuff is a demonstration of self-love. Like this, I think it's one of the highest forms of self-love is just self-care.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a good self-care routine.
Yeah, and let's be honest, pretty fucking easy to fix. It's pretty fucking easy to just go ahead and go, right, I'm going to get a nice haircut. I'm going to go and get a bit of a tan. Right, I'm going to go and get some nice clothes. Right, get a nice little watch. Doesn't have to be expensive.
get rid of the snot off my my nice tops.
yeah, from your baby boys, yeah. But it's an easy thing. Right, I'll go out to the gym, work on my physique, eat a little bit better. My skin looks a little bit better because I'm eating better. It's well within any man's control, and like again, you see a man who looks good, he's dressed well, his attire holds a certain level of value there.
Yeah, there's something that I noticed when I went and got a tailored suit. Have you ever had a tailored suit?
Of course.
Yeah, where'd you go to get it?
I've got multiple tailored suits.
Have you?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
The first one I ever got was in Thailand.
Yeah.
First one I ever got. I've still got it now. It's just so, because I've spent some money on it in Thailand, which was hard to do then, because this was like, I don't know, fucking 8-9 years ago. Amazing suit.
Yeah.
Really, really fitted. It was modeled on an Armani suit.
Yeah, I think the experience of having the tailored suit as well is like really cool. But do you notice when you buy a tailored suit compared to just one off the shelf from River Island? I don't know what it is. I think I can remember a study, and it was cited in a book. And it's this idea that when you buy something fake versus when you buy something real. So when you they got a group of people, and they got them to buy fake handbags, and they got them to buy real handbags, and they got them to mark their self-esteem based on like how they felt when they had the real one versus the fake one. It's a really interesting. Guess what happened? Like, have a stab. It's quite obvious from the thread we're talking about, but their self-esteem went up markedly when they had the designer, even though they looked exactly the same, but they told them this is fake, but this is the real one.
Mm-hmm.
And because they had the brand, because it was the attachment, whatever it was, their self-esteem, they spent money, they believe, because they spent money on themselves. And that for me was like, oh my gosh. And it's strange and it shouldn't work, but that is human psychology. It's really interesting.
But also, but just like, it's why I'm another advocate of going out to the gym and building some muscle. Clothes fit you better. They look better on you. Like when you wear a suit, it doesn't just fall off you. But I've bought multiple clothes, like maybe branded clothing, and then I've gone to a tailor afterwards. I was like, right, can you tailor these shorts, tailor these trousers? They already fit me pretty well, but I want them to fit me even better.
I want them tighter.
Yeah. I want it to my physique. Right?
I've never done that actually. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, it doesn't cost a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And then the clothes look even better on you just by going to a local tailor.
Yeah, that's really good. And the final one is improve what's called the magnitude in your relationships. And what this means is your perceived value. There's actual ways to improve perceived value. So I've done a previous podcast on this, and we talk about the Mont Blanc pen, and the Mont Blanc pen is more expensive, so you perceive it as higher. And there are ways to be more valuable in society. There's solve bigger problems. When you are a man who solves big problems for people, you're perceived as a high value man. Go and speak to Pete; he'll sort that for you. Like you've probably said that. Go and speak to so and so; he'll sort that for you. It's nice to have those friends. You can go, I'll go and speak to so and so. I guarantee he'll sort that in 2 minutes. I've got a good friend who's actually an ops manager as well, and people are always getting in touch with him to solve problems because he is he's a fixer, but equally, that if you go to him, it gets done. And Another way to improve what we call magnitude is solve the same problems, but for someone who it's a bigger issue for. Now, this is like, say you've got a business, say you're a trainer listening to this, and your current market, you're solving a weight loss problem for a 45-year-old mum. That's not, it could be high value, but she won't see the benefit as much as a CEO who, if he doesn't get his energy back, lose 3 stone, he could lose his job. I mean, this is nothing against 45-year-old housewives, but there's a marked difference in the magnitude of that problem. So if you want to become a high value man, make sure you're pointing your skills at the right place. And this is something that's really important, because you could be, I noticed this when we started doing Heroic Man, is that I'm probably sharing the same wisdom that I shared with my fitness campers 10 years ago. But the information and the wisdom is way more valuable for the current group of men. It's so valuable.
Yeah. So I think, part of this comes down to courage. It's being courageous as a man. So it goes back to what Ben was saying at the start, having self-esteem, having self-respect. Part of that is being able to be courageous. So you play the power moves. You're taking bigger fucking shots. So rather than the 45-year-old lady, you're dealing with a high-level CEO, right? But to deal with that high-level CEO, initially you might have imposter syndrome. You might feel fucking nervous about doing that. It might be well out of your comfort zone. So you've got to be courageous to go and do that.
Yeah,
and step up to that level. Really, part of being a high-value man is fucking your fears. Isn't it? Fuck fears, right? It's getting rid of as many fears as possible, right? A high-value man has diminished a shitload of his fears. He's stopped giving as much of a fuck as he used to.
Yeah.
Right. So then in doing so, because he doesn't really care what other people think. Yeah. He does in the right ways, the right people he cares, but the other ways he doesn't. So he'll play bigger shots.
This actually got me thinking that if you listen to this, how many men out there serve a certain subset of the population because they don't feel good enough to serve the people that they could actually serve? So, for example, are you the accountant serving startup businesses when you kind of resent that a little bit because it's so fucking easy for you, but you're shit scared of going into a big business and offering your services? How many trainers serve the hormonal 45-year-old women because they feel like they're safe with those people, they're like their mum, when they'd get way more stretch from serving someone like me or you, or a CEO, or and that really challenged them. So it's a interesting question. I think if you're listening to this, just check in with yourself. Are you serving the people in your life that would stretch you, or are you serving the people that you're comfortable with serving?
Yeah. Do you give too much of a fuck? Right. Are you letting your fears control you? So you've seen the film Fight Club. You know where I'm going with this. So the film Fight Club, Tyler Durden, right? So Tyler is who? He is the guy who doesn't give a fuck of the main character. So the main character, who you don't know, you never know his name. We never find out his name, right? But Tyler Durden is the other side of him. It's his like true persona. It's his true psyche. And Tyler, he doesn't care. He's got no fear. He does exactly what he wants. And guess what he builds? He builds that huge following. He builds Fight Club. He's got all these people following him. He gets the girls, right? he takes the big shots.
Yeah.
He doesn't care, because that's the other side of him that has no fear.
Actually, there's a homework from this podcast. Go and watch that. It's a great film as well.
Go and watch Fight Club. Yeah. I might watch it tonight after I've had pizza with Leo. And Leo's in bed. Go and watch Fight Club and look at the difference between the two men, because they are both the same guy, and he only realizes at the end, right? Both the same guy, two different personas. One doesn't care.
Yeah, that's it. We've set you some homework, guys, and that's all we've got to share on how to be a high value man. And we really value you listening today. If you want to continue the conversation, or if actually there's something that's really either got under your skin or made a really been a big point for you today, follow at Pete_Taylor or at Coach Benjamin Owen on Instagram and share that you've listened to the podcast. We always appreciate, guys that have dropping in a message, or ladies listening in as well, and drop us a message. Which one of those points today has really hit home for you? Come and have a conversation with us about it.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.